You sit down in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Nothing is on fire. No one is waiting on you. The dishes can wait. The inbox can wait. And still, the moment your back touches the cushion, something inside you tightens. A small voice, very polite, very familiar, asks if you've really earned this. Most quiet people have felt this exact moment, the strange guilt of resting when nothing is wrong. You probably think the problem is that you're lazy, or undisciplined, or that you haven't done enough today to deserve stopping. That's the story you've been told, and the story you keep telling yourself. But it isn't true. What you're feeling isn't laziness. It isn't a character flaw. It isn't a productivity problem. It's something quieter and much older. Something that lives in the way your nervous system learned to measure its own worth. A pattern we can call the earned pause. The belief deep in your body that rest is a transaction. That stillness must be paid for in advance. That you are only allowed to stop once you've proven, beyond doubt, that you deserve to. And in this note, we're going to look at where that belief came from, why it persists, and why your tiredness is not a debt you owe anyone. Let me show you what the earned pause looks like in real life, because you've probably never seen it named. You finish a task, a real one, something that took focus. And before you can even feel the relief of finishing, your mind is already scanning for the next thing. Not because you want to do more, because stopping feels unsafe. You lie down on the couch in the middle of the day, and within 90 seconds, your hand reaches for your phone. Not to do anything specific, just to make the resting feel less naked, less exposed, less like resting. You take a weekend off, finally, and somewhere around Sunday afternoon, a low hum of dread starts in your chest. You haven't done anything wrong. But your body is bracing, as if a punishment is coming for the crime of doing nothing. You watch other people lounge, really lounge, sprawled on a sofa, half asleep at 3 in the afternoon, no apology in their body, and something inside you tilts between envy and disbelief. How? How do they do that? How is their body so quiet? You try to take a nap, and instead of sleeping, you make a mental list of everything that would have to be true for the nap to be acceptable. The laundry, the email, the text you haven't answered. The nap doesn't happen. The list does. You finish a long week, and instead of softening, you feel anxious. The free time itself feels like a problem, as if rest were a room you walked into and immediately started looking for the exit. And the smallest one, maybe the most telling, you feel the urge to explain your rest to someone who isn't even there. You catch yourself rehearsing the reason you're sitting down, the justification, the receipt, as if some invisible auditor needed proof that you'd earned this hour. If you recognize yourself in any of those, what you have is not a willpower problem. It's a wiring problem. And the wiring is doing exactly what it was trained to do. So let's look at what's actually happening underneath, because once you see the mechanism, the guilt loses some of its grip. Your nervous system has 2 main modes for managing energy. One is the sympathetic mode, the one that mobilizes you, that gets you up, that handles the day. The other is the parasympathetic mode, the one that lets you digest, repair, soften, and rest. In a body that feels safe, those 2 modes trade shifts. You push, then you recover. You engage, then you settle. The recovery is automatic. It doesn't require permission. But for a lot of quiet, sensitive people, that handoff was disrupted very early. Maybe you grew up in a house where rest was suspicious, where stillness was read as laziness or selfishness or weakness. Maybe a parent rested visibly only when they had collapsed, and so your body learned that the only acceptable reason to stop was total exhaustion. Maybe love in your home came attached to output. Praise for the good grades, praise for the helpful child, praise for the one who doesn't complain. And underneath the praise, a quiet contract. You are valuable when you are useful. That contract doesn't disappear when you become an adult. It moves into your body. It becomes the way your nervous system measures whether you're allowed to relax. And so, when you sit down on an ordinary afternoon, the contract activates. It scans for proof. Did you earn this? Have you produced enough? Is there anyone who could accuse you, fairly of being lazy right now. If the answer isn't a clean yes, your body refuses the rest. There's a concept in physiology called allostatic load. It's the wear and tear that builds up in a body that has been bracing for too long. When your nervous system never fully drops into the parasympathetic mode, you accumulate this load. Your cortisol stays slightly elevated. Your sleep is lighter than it should be. Your digestion runs a little off. Your muscles hold tension you don't even notice anymore. And the cruel part is, the more allostatic load you carry, the more you need rest. But the same wiring that built the load is the wiring that won't let you have it. There's also something called the dopamine-seeking system. It's the part of your brain that lights up, not when you receive a reward, but when you anticipate one. When you finish a task, you get a small hit. When you cross something off, you get a small hit. Over years of being praised for output, that system gets trained to associate doing with safety. Doing means I'm okay. Doing means I'm a good person. Doing means no one will be disappointed in me. Stopping, by contrast, gets associated with absence, with nothing arriving, with the system going quiet. And a system that has been trained to need that hit will manufacture urgency where there isn't any, just to keep the loop alive. Add to this the default mode network, the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on a task. In a regulated person, the default mode network is where daydreaming happens, where memory consolidates, where the self gets to wander. It's a beautiful, necessary mode. But in someone who carries the earned pause, the default mode network doesn't get to wander gently. It gets to audit. The moment you stop, it doesn't drift. It investigates. It opens old files. It finds something to worry about. So rest, instead of feeling like release, feels like exposure. The quiet itself becomes a place where the inner judge holds court. Imagine you are 5 years old. You're playing on the floor. Your parent walks in, looks at you, and sighs. Not a big sigh, a small one. The kind a tired adult makes when they see something they didn't have time for. You don't have language for it yet, but your body learns something in that half second. Being seen at rest is dangerous. Being caught not producing is a small offense. So you start to perform usefulness. You tidy your toys before you're asked. You offer to help. You become the easy child, the good one, the quiet one, and every time the praise comes, the wiring deepens. Useful equals loved. Resting equals at risk. Now you're 30-something. The parent isn't in the room. The sigh isn't coming. But your body still scans for it. Every time you sit down, a small 5-year-old part of you is listening for that small sound of disappointment. And because it never quite arrives and never quite leaves, you can never quite settle. This is why the earned pause is so hard to argue with. You can know, intellectually, that you deserve rest. You can read every book on burnout. You can repeat every affirmation. And the wiring will still fire because it's not living in your thoughts. It's living in your tissue, in your gut, in the muscle memory of a child who learned very young that stillness was something to be earned again and again every single day. There's one more layer worth naming. It's called interoception, your ability to feel what's happening inside your own body. People who grew up needing to monitor someone else's mood, a volatile parent, a depressed parent, an anxious parent, often develop strong outer attention and weak inner attention. You can read a room in 2 seconds. You can read your own body in about 2 minutes if you're lucky. So when you sit down to rest, you don't actually feel tiredness as tiredness. You feel a vague unease, a static, a wrongness. And your mind, trying to be helpful, translates that static into the language it knows. Guilt. You must have done something wrong. You must owe something. Pay it, and the static will go away. Except it doesn't. Because the static wasn't guilt. It was your body finally being allowed to feel itself and not knowing what to do with the silence. So here's what I want you to know, and I want you to take this slowly. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not behind. The discomfort you feel when you rest is not evidence that you haven't earned it. It is evidence that, somewhere along the way, you were taught that your worth had to be paid for in advance. And that lesson lives in your body, not in your character. The guilt is not the truth. The guilt is a leftover, a signal from a younger version of you who learned that stopping was unsafe. That signal made sense then. It kept you loved. It kept you praised. It kept you on the right side of a contract you didn't know you'd signed. But you're not 5 anymore. The contract has expired. The auditor isn't real. The disappointment you brace for isn't coming. Most quiet, thoughtful, sensitive people carry some version of this. The ones who were called responsible too early. The ones who were called mature for their age. The ones who learned to be easy because being easy was a kind of safety. You are in good, tired company. And here's the part that matters most. You don't have to fix this today. You don't have to solve the wiring. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. The simple act of recognizing that your guilt around rest is not a moral signal, but an old echo, is already the beginning of something softening. You are allowed to lie down without writing a memo about why. You are allowed to be tired without an explanation that would satisfy a court. You are allowed to take an afternoon, a morning, an hour, a breath, without having earned it according to anyone's standard, including the standard inside your own head. So the next time you sit down and that small, polite voice asks if you've really earned this, you can let the question float past you, the way you'd let a leaf float past in a stream. You don't have to answer it. You don't have to argue with it. You just have to notice that it's a question from a much younger version of you, asked in a much older room, about a contract that no longer applies. And then, gently, you can stay seated. If this resonated, you already know where to come.